This is the story of the Waldorf Astoria, a hotel where the machinery of American power operated behind Art Deco walls, where secrets were the most valuable currency, where what happened in the shadows shaped the visible world. For nearly a century, presidents arrived through hidden tunnels. Diplomats met in coded rooms. Exiled royalty lived in gilded captivity. The hotel kept secrets until the secrets became all there was. The corner of Fifth Avenue and 33rd Street, Manhattan, there was no Waldorf Astoria, not yet. Just two brownstone mansions on adjoining lots. The Astor family homes, old money, real estate money, the kind of wealth that owned entire neighborhoods. William Waldorf Astor lived in one mansion. His aunt, Caroline Schermerhorn Astor, lived in the other. They despised each other. The hatred was generational, social, territorial. Caroline was the Mrs. Astor, the woman who decided who mattered in New York society. William wanted that power for himself. New York in 1893 was a city transforming. Electric lights were replacing gas. The first skyscrapers rose in lower Manhattan. Grand Central Depot stood at 42nd Street, a dirty, chaotic train shed. Nothing grand about it. Hotels existed, of course, but they were either European-style institutions for the wealthy or functional establishments for travelers. No one had built a hotel that was itself a destination, a palace where power could be performed, where American money could prove it was equal to European nobility. William Waldorf Astor decided to destroy his mansion and build a hotel, partially to make money, mostly to humiliate his aunt. He would turn his home into a commercial establishment, the ultimate insult to a woman who defined social hierarchy by who was allowed into private homes. The Waldorf Hotel opened March 14, 1893. 13 stories, German Renaissance architecture, 800 rooms, electric lights throughout, private bathrooms, telephones. Revolutionary at the time. Caroline Astor stood in her mansion next door, watching carriages arrive at her nephew's hotel, watching society, her society, choose commerce over breeding. 4 years later, she surrendered. She moved uptown and hired the same architect to build an even taller hotel on her property. The Astoria Hotel opened in 1897. Connected to the Waldorf by a corridor called Peacock Alley. The hyphenated name Waldorf Astoria became shorthand for luxury itself, the hotel that family warfare built. For 32 years, the original Waldorf Astoria defined American hospitality. Presidents stayed there. Millionaires lived there. Oscar of the Waldorf, Oscar Churkey, created Waldorf salad and eggs Benedict in its kitchens. Meet me at the Waldorf became the phrase that meant you'd arrived. But by 1929, the hotel was obsolete. Too small, too far downtown. Fifth Avenue at 33rd was becoming commercial, not fashionable. The aristocrats were moving uptown. The city was moving uptown. And something else was happening. The country was about to collapse. October 1929. Wall Street crashes. The Great Depression begins. This is when someone decided to build the largest, most expensive hotel in the world. The Astor family sold the original Waldorf Astoria. The building was demolished to make room for the Empire State Building. The name, worth more than the land, went to a new project, a hotel that would redefine what a hotel could be. The visionary was actually a committee, a consortium of investors led by the New York Central Railroad and the Astor estate. But the real architect of what the Waldorf would become was Lucius Boomer, president of the Waldorf Astoria Corporation, and the architectural firm Schultz and Weaver. The location they chose was revolutionary, an entire city block bounded by Park Avenue, Lexington Avenue, 49th Street, and 50th Street. Directly above the newly electrified railway tracks running into Grand Central Terminal. The tracks were key, because building above Grand Central meant access, secret access. Construction began in 1930. Depression be damned. While bread lines formed on nearby streets, workers laid a foundation that went down 3 stories below street level. Not just for structural support, for a railway platform. Track 61 was designated as the private presidential platform, accessible from the hotel via a hidden elevator, large enough for a full railway car to pull in beneath the building. Ramps and elevators capable of lifting an automobile directly from train car to hotel basement. The architectural plans show it clearly, a secret entrance for power. The hotel that rose above was unlike anything built before. 47 stories, the tallest hotel in the world, twin copper-top towers visible across Manhattan, Art Deco exterior in limestone and granite, 6 kitchens, 5 restaurants, 2,000 guest rooms. The interior was designed to overwhelm. The main lobby on Park Avenue featured marble columns, bronze elevator doors, mosaic floors. A 9 by 12-foot mahogany clock, the centerpiece, stood near the main entrance. Time itself announced your arrival. The grand ballroom could host 3,000 people. The starlight roof offered outdoor dining on the 18th floor. The Empire Room became the most prestigious nightclub in America. The Basildon Room, paneling stripped from an 18th century English manor, offered private dining for the most powerful. Every material was excessive. Imported marble from 6 countries, silk from China, carpets from Persia, crystal from Austria, wood from South America. The hotel was designed to announce, American money can buy anything. Construction cost $20 million in 1931 dollars, approximately $400 million today. Financed during the worst economic collapse in American history. The audacity was the point. October 1st, 1931. The Waldorf Astoria opened. Herbert Hoover, president during the Depression he couldn't stop, gave a radio address from the White House broadcast to the ballroom. The opening of this hotel is evidence of American courage and confidence, he said. He didn't mention that thousands were unemployed within blocks of the celebration. The hotel was immediately successful, not because Americans could afford it, because the people who could afford it needed somewhere to prove they were immune to everyone else's suffering. Walking into the Waldorf Astoria in 1932 was walking into an alternate dimension where the Depression didn't exist. The Park Avenue entrance led through bronze revolving doors into a lobby that announced you had left ordinary life behind. Marble floors reflected light from crystal chandeliers. The famous Waldorf clock, a Victorian bronze and mahogany timepiece acquired from the original hotel, stood at the lobby center. Meeting someone under the clock became New York shorthand. But the clock wasn't just decoration. It was a signal system. The staff knew which guests were waiting. Doormen knew which cars to summon. Everything had purpose beneath the elegance. The rooms were unprecedented. 2,000 of them, but even the smallest featured private bathrooms, still a luxury in 1931. Telephones in every room connected to 24-hour operators who knew your name. Climate control maintained perfect temperature regardless of season. Custom furniture, silk wallpaper, radio built into the walls. The presidential suite occupied the entire 41st floor of the Waldorf Towers, the hotel's residential section. Living room, dining room, library, 4 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms. Windows overlooking Central Park and the city. Rent, $10,000 a month in 1931, approximately $200,000 today. Who could afford this during the Depression? More people than you'd think. The Waldorf became home to permanent residents, wealthy families who lived in the towers year-round. By 1935, over 100 families maintained permanent residences, not hotel guests, residents, people who called the Waldorf home. The towers had a separate entrance on 50th Street, separate elevators, separate staff. You could live at the Waldorf and never enter the hotel proper. Privacy within publicity, isolation within society. The most famous permanent resident arrived in 1934, Herbert Hoover. The ex-president, defeated by Roosevelt in 1932, moved into the Waldorf Towers after leaving office. He would live there for the next 31 years. Suite 31A, until his death in 1964. Hoover's choice was telling. He wanted to remain visible, relevant. The Waldorf kept you in the conversation without requiring you to maintain a private home. The staff managed everything. The address provided status. You could be seen when you wanted, invisible when you didn't. Other permanent residents included Cole Porter, who lived in the towers for 28 years, General Douglas MacArthur, who moved in after being fired by Truman and stayed until his death, the Duke and Duchess of Windsor, but their story requires its own telling. The hotel staff operated with military precision. Oscar Churkey, transferred from the original hotel, oversaw the kitchens. Eugene Cavallero managed the Empire Room. Claude Philippe ran Peacock Alley, the corridor connecting the Park and Lexington entrances where guests paraded in their finest. The unwritten rules were clear. The staff remembered everything. Remembered your name, your drink, your preferences, your schedule. But they forgot on command. What happened at the Waldorf stayed at the Waldorf. Discretion wasn't policy. It was the product being sold. The Empire Room became the center of New York nightlife. Capacity, 700. Live music every night. In 1931, Xavier Cugat and his orchestra played residents. Later came Glenn Miller, Duke Ellington, Frank Sinatra. You couldn't hear them anywhere else. You came to the Waldorf. The Starlight Roof, the outdoor nightclub, operated May through September on the hotel's 18th floor, dancing under the stars while looking down at the city. The exclusivity was the point. Not everyone could get a table. That's why tables mattered. The Grand Ballroom hosted events that shaped American culture. The Alfred E. Smith Memorial Foundation dinner became an annual political tradition, presidential candidates appearing together weeks before elections. The custom started in 1945, still continues today. But beneath the glamour, the real power operated invisibly. Track 61 saw its first presidential arrival, February 1933. Franklin Roosevelt, president-elect, arrived via private railway car. An elevator lifted his car to the hotel basement. Secret Service transferred him to another car. He arrived at a private entrance. No cameras, no crowds. No one saw him unable to walk. The hotel knew what they were hiding. The staff executed it perfectly. FDR used Track 61 for every New York visit during his presidency, dozens of times. Never photographed arriving, never seen in his wheelchair. The platform became presidential routine. Harry Truman used it. Dwight Eisenhower used it. The Secret Service maintained a permanent detail there. The elevator mechanisms were tested weekly. The route from platform to hotel was secured and swept. This was the Waldorf's real value to power, not luxury, infrastructure for secrecy. The 1940s transformed the Waldorf from luxury hotel to political fortress. World War II turned the hotel into informal headquarters for governments in exile. European aristocrats fled Nazi occupation and settled in the towers. Not refugees. Paying residents with fortunes moved ahead of the invasion. They held court in suites, plotting returns to power that might never come. The hotel became a neutral ground, a place where enemies could occupy the same building without confronting each other. The Waldorf facilitated separation. Different entrances, different elevators, different dining rooms. You could live there for years and never encounter someone you didn't want to see. This convenience attracted the kind of residents the hotel never advertised. Frank Costello, the mob boss, maintained a suite. His presence was known but ignored. The Waldorf housed judges, prosecutors, politicians. Costello lived among them. Everyone understood the arrangement. Power coexisted. The hotel made it possible. The staff managed these contradictions. A waiter might serve breakfast to a federal judge in one suite, then deliver lunch to the man the judge was investigating 3 floors up. The information they possessed could have destroyed careers. They said nothing. Multi-generational employment was common. Fathers worked there. Sons followed. The institutional knowledge accumulated across decades. The staff knew who was sleeping where, who was drinking too much, who was making deals they shouldn't. The discretion was inheritance, but discretion protected more than reputations. The Waldorf hosted meetings between American intelligence and Italian mafia bosses negotiating cooperation for the invasion of Sicily. Charles Lucky Luciano, imprisoned in New York, had information about Sicilian contacts. The meetings happened in Waldorf conference rooms, government officials and organized crime coordinating war strategy. The hotel didn't ask questions. The hotel provided rooms. The United Nations held its first meeting on U.S. soil in the Waldorf's ballroom. Delegates from 50 nations crammed into the grand ballroom to draft the UN Charter's final language. Security was impossible. Too many people, too many conflicts, too many secrets. But the Waldorf managed it. Staff who spoke 20 languages translated conversations. Separate dining areas prevented hostile delegations from confronting each other. The hotel coordinated what diplomacy couldn't. The Waldorf Towers became known as the Towers of Power. By 1950, permanent residents included former presidents, active generals, deposed monarchs, Hollywood stars, business titans. The building contained more concentrated power per square foot than anywhere except the White House. The dark side was obvious to anyone paying attention. The hotel's discretion protected affairs. Powerful men kept mistresses in separate suites. Wives lived in the towers while husbands entertained guests the staff pretended not to see. The elevators were choreographed to prevent awkward encounters. The hotel protected illegal activity. Gambling happened in suites. Drug use was ignored. The Waldorf didn't call police. That would violate discretion. Unless absolutely forced, the hotel handled problems internally. The hierarchy was rigid. Permanent residents received different service than hotel guests. Long-term guests received different service than overnight stays. The staff knew instantly where you ranked. Your room number told them everything. The Waldorf became a city within a city. 6 restaurants meant residents never had to leave. The barbershop, beauty salon, tailor, florist, and doctor's office meant every need was met internally. You could live there for years without walking on a public street. Some residents did exactly that, but the most famous captives were royal. June 1937, Edward VIII abdicated the British throne to marry Wallis Simpson, an American divorcee. The scandal consumed 2 continents. The king chose love over duty. Romantic to some, betrayal to others. Edward became the Duke of Windsor. Wallis became the Duchess. They were exiled from Britain, unwanted by the royal family, distrusted by the government, suspected of Nazi sympathies during the war. Too famous to ignore, too controversial to embrace. They needed somewhere to live, somewhere public enough to maintain relevance, private enough to avoid constant scrutiny, luxurious enough to maintain royal pretense, contained enough to prevent political damage. The Waldorf Towers offered exactly this. The Duke and Duchess of Windsor moved into a suite on the 28th floor of the Waldorf Towers. They would live there, on and off, for the next 22 years. The suite was renovated to royal specifications. The Duchess oversaw every detail. French antiques, custom drapes, her monogram on everything. The apartment cost $5,000 a month, approximately $60,000 today. The Duke's family paid. His allowance as former king required he maintain royal appearance. Even in exile, the Waldorf became their gilded cage. The Duchess held court in the suite, entertaining visitors who wanted proximity to royalty without responsibility for them. Lunch parties, cocktail receptions, dinner for carefully selected guests. The performance of status without power. The Duke grew increasingly depressed. He had given up an empire for this woman. What he got was a hotel suite and a calendar of meaningless social obligations. He drank heavily. Staff delivered bottles discreetly. The Duchess managed his public appearances, making sure he was presentable when needed, hiding him when he wasn't. The contrast did not go unnoticed. The ex-king of the British Empire, living in an American hotel, financially dependent on the family that exiled him. The most romantic decision of the 20th century, ending in scheduled meals and prescribed appearances. The Waldorf made this sustainable. The staff managed his decline. The hotel provided infrastructure for a life that appeared normal from outside. Behind the suite door, the reality was darker, but the hotel kept the secret. That was the job. The Cold War is freezing into permanent standoff. The Waldorf Astoria becomes the unofficial meeting ground between American power and the world. It's trying to shape, but not in ballrooms, not at publicized dinners, in a place that wouldn't appear on maps for another 40 years. The Silver Corridor. The hotel's layout included a private hallway on the 42nd floor of the Waldorf Towers, accessible only by specific elevators, guarded by Secret Service and hotel security. Soundproofed, climate-controlled, furnished with conference rooms that had no windows. The corridor got its name from the silver-colored wallpaper, elegant but generic, designed to appear in photographs as somewhere in New York without identifying the location. This is where American presidents met foreign leaders without press coverage, where intelligence agencies debriefed defectors, where diplomatic negotiations happened before official negotiations, where the machinery of American foreign policy operated between public positions and private reality. The Silver Corridor's existence wasn't confirmed until declassified documents appeared in the 1990s. But intelligence historians always suspected. Too many meetings happened at the Waldorf without clear explanation. Too many diplomats remembered hotels' rooms that didn't match the hotel's public layout. The Waldorf cooperated fully. The hotel designated specific suites for intelligence use, installed secure phone lines, provided spaces that could be swept for listening devices, hired staff with security clearances. The hotel wasn't just accommodating government business, it was infrastructure for it. Joseph Stalin dies. Nikita Khrushchev rises to lead the Soviet Union. The Cold War needs new channels of communication. Official diplomacy is too visible, too constrained by public positions. The Waldorf provides the alternative. Back-channel negotiations between U.S. and Soviet officials happened in Silver Corridor conference rooms, not official meetings. Exploratory conversations. Feeling out positions. Testing possibilities. Nothing documented. Nothing announced. The hotel's discretion made this possible. Staff who saw Soviet diplomats arriving said nothing. Records of which rooms were occupied stayed confidential. Even the hotel's billing disguised who was paying. The meetings were deniable. If exposed, both governments could claim they were unauthorized. Just diplomats talking informally at a hotel. Nothing official. Nothing binding. But deals were made. Understandings were reached. The visible diplomacy that followed was built on groundwork laid in the Silver Corridor. Fidel Castro arrives in New York for the United Nations General Assembly. He's already been in power in Cuba for 2 years. The U.S. is trying to decide how to respond. Diplomatic recognition, isolation, covert action. Castro wants to stay at the Waldorf. The hotel refuses. Too controversial. Too risky. Castro moves to the Hotel Teresa in Harlem, turning the rejection into propaganda. The luxury hotel rejects the revolutionary. But American intelligence wanted the meeting to happen, wanted to assess Castro personally, gauge whether he could be worked with or needed to be removed. A CIA officer met Castro in a suite at the Waldorf. Not an official meeting. Castro didn't stay there, but he visited. The conversation was never recorded. Both governments denied it happened. 20 years later, declassified files confirmed it. The meeting occurred. The Waldorf provided the location. The pattern repeated throughout the Cold War. PLO representatives met Israeli intelligence. Pakistani officials met Indian counterparts. Chinese diplomats met Taiwanese officials. Enemies who couldn't be seen negotiating officially used the Waldorf as neutral ground. The hotel's value was plausible deniability. If photographed entering, you were just checking into a hotel. No one could prove who you met inside. The Waldorf had hundreds of guests, dozens of conferences, constant traffic. Individual meetings disappeared into the general activity. But the hotel knew. The staff knew. The records existed somewhere. This created leverage. The Waldorf's management had information about meetings that governments wanted hidden. They never used it overtly. But the knowledge provided protection. The hotel became too valuable to threaten, too useful to regulate, too connected to touch. Federal investigators looking into mob activity at the hotel found their inquiries quietly redirected. The Waldorf hosted too many senators, too many government officials, Too many people who depended on the hotel's discretion. By the 1960s, the Waldorf operated as semi-official American infrastructure. Presidents used it. Intelligence agencies relied on it. Foreign governments trusted it. The hotel was private enterprise performing public functions. The question was, who actually controlled it? Everything starts changing. The Waldorf Astoria has operated for 32 years as American institution, the hotel where power stays, the address that means you've arrived, the building where secrets are safe. But the economics are becoming impossible. The hotel was built with Depression-era financing, low interest rates, long-term loans, patient creditors. By the 1960s, those arrangements are ending. The debt needs to be refinanced. The property taxes in Midtown Manhattan are crushing. The maintenance on a 32-year-old building is constant and expensive. The New York Central Railroad, the original investor, wants out. They're selling assets. Railroads are dying. Real estate is the future. The Waldorf is a trophy property. But it's not producing enough profit. The hotel needs renovations. The wiring is outdated. The plumbing is failing. The climate control systems are breaking down. Fixing them means closing floors, losing revenue, spending millions the hotel doesn't have. And something else is happening. The culture is changing. The generation that built the Waldorf, that saw it as the pinnacle of achievement, is aging out. The new generation sees it differently. Too formal, too traditional, too much a monument to old money and old power. Business travelers want modern efficiency, not Art Deco grandeur. Tourists want convenience, not prestige. The Waldorf's elaborate service, the thing that made it special, is becoming a luxury fewer people want to pay for. The hotel tries to adapt, renovates some floors with contemporary decor, adds modern amenities. But this alienates the traditional clientele without attracting enough new guests. The permanent residents remain. The towers are still prestigious, but the hotel below is struggling. The Waldorf is sold to Conrad Hilton's hotel empire for $30 million. The deal is celebrated as rescue. Hilton promises to honor the Waldorf's traditions, maintain its standards, preserve its character. The truth is more complicated. Hilton sees the Waldorf as a brand, not a building. The value is the name, the prestige, the address, the actual operation, the staff, the service, the discretion. Those are costs to be managed. Hilton begins cutting immediately, not dramatically, not in ways immediately visible, but staff positions are eliminated through attrition. Suppliers are renegotiated for cheaper alternatives. Services are scaled back incrementally. The permanent residents notice first. The maid who cleaned their suite for 20 years is replaced with rotating staff who don't remember preferences. The concierge who knew their schedule is gone. The consistency that made the towers work is eroding. But Hilton is also making investments, renovating the ballrooms, updating the restaurants, marketing the Waldorf internationally. The hotel is being positioned for a different kind of clientele. Corporate events, convention business, international tourism. The shift creates tension. The old Waldorf and the new Waldorf are occupying the same building. The staff is caught between competing visions. Maintain the traditional service for residents. Provide efficient service for hotel guests. Do both with fewer people and less money. The strain is showing. Martin Luther King Jr. is assassinated in April. Robert Kennedy is assassinated in June. Cities burn. The Democratic National Convention in Chicago becomes violent confrontation between protesters and police. The country is fracturing. The Waldorf tries to maintain neutrality, hosting events for all sides, but neutrality becomes impossible. The hotel's discretion, its refusal to take positions, starts looking like complicity. Students protest outside the hotel. The Waldorf represents everything they're fighting against: wealth, power, privilege, secrecy. The building itself becomes a target. The hotel increases security, hires more guards, implements stricter access control. The welcoming elegance of the public spaces gives way to defensive architecture. Metal detectors at entrances, ID checks for guests, the performance of openness constrained by the reality of threat. The permanent residents are aging. Herbert Hoover dies in 1964. The Duke of Windsor dies in 1972. The Duchess remains in the suite, increasingly isolated, her mental state deteriorating. She rarely leaves the apartment. Staff deliver meals. Doctors visit privately. She's still performing royalty, but the audience has disappeared. Cole Porter dies in 1964. Douglas MacArthur dies in 1964. The generation that made the towers of power is dying. The replacements aren't coming. Younger, wealthy people don't want to live in hotels. They buy co-ops. They want ownership, not service. The towers start having vacancies. Unthinkable in the 1940s. Reality in the 1970s. The oil crisis, inflation spikes, travel declines, the hotel business craters, the Waldorf is hit hard. Occupancy drops below 50%. The hotel is losing money. Hilton implements layoffs. Entire departments are eliminated. The silver service in the restaurants is replaced with cheaper alternatives. The musicians in the Empire Room are let go. The room becomes a disco. The staff who remain watch the hotel they built being dismantled. The institutional knowledge, the discretion, the memory, the invisible competence is walking out the door in severance packages. The hotel survives the 1970s. But something essential is gone. The Waldorf is still prestigious, still famous, still operating. But it's no longer the place where power stays. It's the place where power used to stay. A monument to a version of American success that's already passed. The building doesn't care, but the people inside it do. Hilton sells the Waldorf Astoria to the Prudential Insurance Company for $79 million. Prudential isn't a hotel company. They're an insurance and financial services company. They buy the Waldorf as an investment property, a valuable asset in Midtown Manhattan. The hotel operation is secondary to the real estate value. This changes everything. Prudential leases the hotel back to Hilton to operate. But Hilton no longer owns it. They're tenants. Their incentive is to minimize costs and maximize short-term revenue. Long-term preservation isn't their concern. Prudential's incentive is property value, which means maximizing the land value, which means the hotel use might not be the highest and best use. For the first time, serious people start asking, should the Waldorf Astoria still be a hotel? The property occupies an entire city block in Midtown Manhattan. The land alone is worth hundreds of millions. The building is tall, but it's not maximizing density. Modern zoning would allow a taller, more profitable building. Developers start circling, proposing to buy the property, demolish the hotel, build a luxury residential tower or office building. The returns would be astronomical compared to hotel operations. The Waldorf Towers residents panic. This is their home. They can't be evicted easily. They have long-term leases. But if the building is sold for demolition, their leases could be bought out. They could be forced to leave. Preservation groups mobilize. The Waldorf Astoria is an Art Deco masterpiece, an architectural landmark. Destroying it would be cultural vandalism. The Landmarks Preservation Commission designates the Waldorf's public spaces as interior landmarks. The lobby, the grand ballroom, the Peacock Alley corridor, and several other spaces are protected. They cannot be demolished or significantly altered. This saves the hotel. But it also complicates renovation. Any changes to protected spaces require approval. Restoration must meet historical standards. This makes updates expensive and slow. The hotel is caught between preservation and profitability. 1988 to 2006. The Waldorf is sold multiple times. Each ownership change brings new management, new priorities, new strategies. None solve the fundamental problem. Operating a historic luxury hotel in modern Manhattan is brutally expensive. The permanent residents continue declining. The Duchess of Windsor dies in 1986. Her suite sits empty. The towers have entire floors with vacancies. The building is too large for the demand. Hilton tries upgrading, renovating rooms, modernizing systems. But each renovation costs millions and takes floors offline. The hotel can't modernize without losing revenue, can't generate revenue without modernizing. The staff continues shrinking. The ratio of staff to guests that made the Waldorf special is gone. The service is still good, but it's no longer exceptional. The difference between the Waldorf and other luxury hotels is narrowing. The discretion, the defining feature, is harder to maintain with rotating staff. New employees don't have the institutional knowledge, don't remember the guests, don't know the unwritten rules. The culture that took decades to build is dissolving. Hilton buys the Waldorf back, purchases it from Prudential for approximately $400 million. This is presented as Hilton's commitment to the hotel, their renewed investment. But Hilton also sees another option, condominiums. The towers could be converted to luxury condos, private ownership, multi-million-dollar units. The hotel below could continue operating, but the residential floors could generate massive one-time revenue. Hilton applies for permits, begins planning the conversion. Then the 2008 financial crisis hits. Luxury real estate collapses. The condo plan is shelved. The hotel limps through the recession. Occupancy drops. Revenue declines. Hilton cuts costs everywhere possible. Deferred maintenance accumulates. The building is deteriorating. Then comes the offer no one expected. October 2014. The Anbang Insurance Group, a Chinese company, agrees to purchase the Waldorf Astoria from Hilton for $1.95 billion. The price is staggering. Nearly $2 billion for a hotel that's losing money. The per-room cost is higher than any hotel transaction in history. No one buys a hotel for $2 billion because of cash flow. You buy it for the trophy, the prestige, the symbolism. China is buying the Waldorf Astoria, the hotel where American presidents stay, where power has operated for 83 years, the most American hotel in America. The purchase triggers immediate national security concerns. The Secret Service realizes the problem first. Every U.S. president since Herbert Hoover has stayed at the Waldorf when visiting New York. The presidential suite is electronically secured, swept regularly for listening devices, considered safe enough for classified conversations. If a Chinese company owns the building, can it still be secure? The answer is no. Foreign ownership creates espionage risk. The new owners could install surveillance equipment during renovations, could place listening devices in walls, could monitor communications, could track who visits presidential suites. The Secret Service announces U.S. presidents will no longer stay at the Waldorf Astoria. The tradition that began with Herbert Hoover in 1931 ends with Barack Obama in 2015. The symbolic loss is enormous. The hotel is no longer trusted by the American government it once served. But the security concerns go deeper. Track 61 still exists beneath the building. The private presidential platform is still accessible from the hotel basement. If foreign intelligence controls the building, they control access to secret infrastructure. The Secret Service begins planning to seal Track 61 permanently. The elevator from platform to hotel will be disabled. The entrance will be secured. The railway car, FDR's car, still sitting on the tracks, will be protected. But the Waldorf will no longer have access. The secret that made the hotel valuable to power becomes the reason power abandons it. Anbang promises nothing will change. The hotel will be renovated but not altered. The staff will be retained. The tradition will be honored. The reality is different. Anbang announces closure for renovation. Every guest room will be gutted and rebuilt. The towers will be converted to luxury condominiums. The hotel portion will shrink from 1,415 rooms to 375 rooms. The math is clear. Condo sales generate more profit than hotel operations. The residential portion will be sold to international buyers for tens of millions per unit. The hotel becomes a luxury amenity for the condo building, not the primary purpose. The permanent residents are forced out. Multi-decade residents receive buyout offers, some generous, some not. But the message is clear: leave.